There's a moment just before everything changes, but it doesn't look like clarity. It looks like stillness, too quiet to trust. It feels like standing at the edge of something unseen, heart heavy with effort, mind full of reasons, body wired from doing everything right, and still, nothing moves, not outside, not inside. This is where most people stop. But what if this stillness isn't absence? What if it's the field preparing to rupture? Let's name something that few dare to say out loud. You've done the journaling, the visualizations, the affirmations. You've tuned in to countless teachings, understood the mechanics of the quantum field, repeated the mantras, followed the routines, and still, the shift hasn't arrived. And maybe a voice inside whispers, something must be blocking it. But what if that voice isn't your truth, but your old field trying to survive? A quantum shift isn't a reward for effort. It's a collapse in the coherence of who you used to be, not just mentally, but vibrationally, emotionally, neurologically. The quantum field doesn't move because you're trying harder. It moves when your frequency ruptures the loop. It responds to vibration, not volume, coherence, not repetition, embodiment, not performance. You're not failing because your intention is weak. You're circling because your vibrational identity hasn't yet cracked open. An identity doesn't shift through force. It dissolves through coherence, the subtle but undeniable moment when your nervous system no longer resonates with the timeline you've been calling reality. This is not about trying to manifest harder. This is about decoding the signal you've been unconsciously transmitting, the emotional frequencies locked beneath your efforts, the patterns your body replays even when your mind believes it's ready. Because the truth is, your field isn't waiting for another technique. It's waiting for rupture, for reconfiguration, for the collapse of the wave you keep stabilizing without knowing. In quantum physics, this is called wave function collapse, when the infinite possibilities condense into one manifested outcome. But collapse doesn't happen from hoping. It happens when the system reaches vibrational instability. In emotional language, when who you've been can no longer carry the frequency of who you're becoming. So what if your manifestation isn't blocked, it's delayed because your current field is still too stable, too coherent with the past, too entangled in emotional signatures that no longer serve you but still define you? The rupture happens when coherence shifts, when your heart, brain, and body stop looping the same emotional signal and start aligning with something your nervous system has never felt before. This is not just a mental shift. It's a neuro-emotional bifurcation, the default mode network rewiring, the vibrational identity reorganizing. This is where the field prepares. And you remember. So now I ask you, not from the surface, but from the field within you, what if nothing is blocked, just unruptured? What if reality hasn't changed, not because you're not ready, but because your old coherence is still intact? And what if this video is not a new answer, but the sacred permission for your field to break? Breathe. Feel. Listen for the vibration underneath your words. This is where the shift begins.
There's a specific kind of ache that lives beneath the surface of desire. Not the ache of not having, but the ache of reliving. When you've already seen the vision, felt the fire of your intention, believed with every fiber that this time would be different, only to find yourself again in a reality that feels too familiar. It's subtle at first. The recurring situations, the emotional tone of your days, the sense that you've been here before. Not just circumstantially, but vibrationally, like you're manifesting on repeat, even though your desires have changed. What no one tells you is that this loop isn't created by failure. It's created by frequency. More precisely, by the emotional signature you unconsciously broadcast when you try to manifest from intensity rather than precision. Wanting something with urgency feels like power, but urgency vibrates lack. Desperation may sound like commitment in the mind, but in the field, it collapses into absence. Because the quantum field doesn't measure effort, it measures coherence. The truth is, many are not manifesting their future. They're echoing their past. Not because they're lazy, but because the brain and body are designed to predict, not to create. The default mode network, the system responsible for internal narrative and emotional memory, loops emotional predictions based on who you've been, not who you're becoming. So even when you visualize a new timeline, if your emotional field is saturated with the residue of unintegrated past versions, the signal you transmit stabilizes that same old archetype again and again. It's not that your manifestation tools don't work. It's that they're powered by an identity you haven't yet updated. Beneath your affirmations may still live the frequency of doubt. Beneath your scripting may still vibrate the ache of being unseen. The field doesn't respond to the content of your intention. It mirrors the coherence of your identity. And coherence, in this context, means vibrational match between what you say you want and what your nervous system expects to survive. So, how do you meet this loop, not with more strategy, but with presence? You begin to timestamp your emotional field, to track the signature of past manifestations, not by outcome, but by the felt emotion they carried. The job you received when you were anxious, the partner you attracted when you were afraid of abandonment, the synchronicity that arrived and disappeared. These moments are not random. They are mirrors of unconscious frequency codes. In neuroscience, we call this Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together, wire together. But in spiritual terms, this means something deeper. Emotional repetition becomes reality architecture. The field organizes itself around familiar signals. Your reality isn't repeating because you're doing something wrong. It's repeating because your emotional memory is louder than your conscious voice. So, we arrive at a quiet truth. The reason you keep living the same emotional storyline is not because you're cursed or broken or sabotaging yourself. It's because the emotional archetype you're carrying has not yet been fully witnessed, felt, and released. The universe is not testing you. It's stabilizing you in the field you have not yet disrupted. But disruption doesn't require chaos. It requires coherence. When the signal changes, the structure must respond. When the vibration shifts, the loop can no longer hold. So, here's the question that begins to break the pattern. What emotional frequency are you still calling home? And who would you be without it? Let the silence answer you. The field already knows.
There's a quiet mechanism inside you, always transmitting, always shaping. Not through words, not through thought alone, but through electromagnetic coherence, through invisible alignment between your heart, your brain, and the emotional field that surrounds you. Long before reality shifts, your frequency has already voted. It's easy to believe that reality moves because of clarity of vision, that if you just visualize the outcome long enough, it must arrive. But in quantum terms, vision without coherence is noise. Thought without resonance is static. The field doesn't respond to mental imagery alone. It responds to vibrational precision, to the emotional clarity beneath the image. Coherence isn't created by focus, it's created by agreement. When thought, feeling, and nervous system stop contradicting each other. Your brain, pulsing with electromagnetic rhythm, is not just thinking, it's broadcasting, measurable, detectable, and profoundly influential. According to research from HeartMath and studies using EEG and fMRI, your electromagnetic field becomes exponentially more ordered when the heart and brain are in synchrony. And in that order, something extraordinary happens. The probability wave begins to collapse. Reality begins to crystallize around your coherence. But here's the twist no one talks about. Coherence is not intensity. It's not loud. It's not forceful. It's subtle. It's the moment when your body no longer argues with your vision, when your field stops sending mixed signals, when there's nothing left in you resisting the vibration of having. This is why, in quantum mechanics, the wave collapses not just from observation, but from interaction. Emotional alignment is interaction. It's the field recognizing its mirror. And when that mirror is clear, when your internal signal stops fluctuating in fear, effort, or doubt, the field has no choice. It responds instantly. Not always with visible results, but always with energetic shifts. Ask yourself this, right now, what emotional movie are you broadcasting? Not what you are trying to create, but what you are actually radiating. Beneath the goal, what's the frequency? Beneath the desire, what's the field? This moment holds more power than the entire strategy, because reality doesn't shift in the future. It shifts here, when the signal stabilizes, when the observer becomes the transmitter. Many speak of the quantum Zeno effect, the idea that over-observing a particle without changing its context causes it to remain static. Spiritually, this translates to obsessing over your manifestation while emotionally still vibrating lack. Watching the wave without entering coherence. Desiring the result while broadcasting fear. In that tension, nothing moves. Not because the universe is ignoring you, but because your field hasn't changed. You don't need to try harder. You need to tune deeper. Because you're not building a new tower. You're aligning to a frequency that already exists, a timeline that already holds you. But it cannot meet you until your signal becomes still enough to match it. The truth is simple, but sacred. Thought directs, feeling transmits, coherence collapses. So pause for a moment, not with effort, but with awareness. Let your body become the transmitter. Let your coherence become the invitation. The wave is already listening. Sometimes the most devoted rituals carry the quietest fear. You light the candle, you script the vision, you visualize the outcome with full attention. And yet, beneath the beauty of the practice, there's a subtle urgency, a nervous edge that whispers, "It hasn't happened yet." What appears as devotion is often disguised survival. What looks like faith may be fear wearing a mantra. This is the paradox of spiritual effort. When rituals are driven by emotional scarcity, they don't align you with a new timeline. They reinforce the frequency of the one you're trying to escape. The more you repeat the affirmation from a place of doubt, the more you transmit the doubt. The more you visualize with clenched energy, the more you stabilize the absence of what you're seeking. It's not your practice that's broken, it's the vibration it's built on. The field reads beneath the surface. It doesn't measure how beautifully you speak your intention. It feels the biochemical signature behind the words. The cortisol spikes, the dopamine crashes, the somatic residue of lack. When your body is tense, your field is unclear. When your breath is shallow, your signal is fragmented. This is not punishment, it's physics. The quantum field is neutral. It simply mirrors coherence or incoherence. There is a moment in every spiritual journey when the tools stop working, not because they've lost their power, but because they've become masks. When the practice becomes a performance, when stillness becomes a checkbox, when intention becomes a form of control, and control, no matter how sacred it appears, is still fear. Fear of not being held, fear of staying stuck, fear that maybe you are the reason reality hasn't shifted. There's a story not often told, a woman who visualized every day for 6 months. Her journals were full, her heart was committed, but her body was exhausted. She couldn't understand why nothing changed until she stopped, not out of defeat, but curiosity. And in that silence, she met the part of her that was using ritual to avoid presence. Her visualizations weren't wrong, but they were driven by a part of her that didn't yet feel safe in the now. And in that moment of stillness, without trying, something broke open, not in the world, in her field. And from there, the shift began. Sometimes the most powerful practice is the pause, not as a tactic, but as a surrender. A 3-day window without manifesting, without fixing, without reaching. A sacred space where your field resets, where your nervous system exhales, where the old timeline softens its grip. This isn't giving up. It's remembering that the quantum self does not chase, it aligns. So if your rituals have started to feel like pressure, if your mantras echo with exhaustion, it may not mean you're failing. It may mean your system is asking for coherence, not performance, presence, not perfection. Let yourself be still enough to feel the fear behind the effort. Let yourself be silent enough to hear what your field has been trying to say. You're not behind, you're remembering. And sometimes remembering begins when the ritual ends.
There is a kind of internal contradiction that doesn't show on the surface. You may say the right words, feel the right emotions, and hold a clear intention in your conscious mind. But beneath it, a different signal vibrates, subtle, unspoken, often unconscious, yet stronger than anything you're trying to manifest. The contradiction is not in your will, it's in your field, in the dissonance between what you believe you want and who you still believe you are. Incoherence doesn't come from lack of desire, it comes from lack of vibrational agreement. When your conscious intention reaches for a timeline that your nervous system doesn't yet believe is safe, the field doesn't reject you. It simply responds to the signal with the most charge. And almost always, that signal lives in the body, not in the mind. You can visualize wealth while vibrating unworthiness. You can affirm love while transmitting abandonment. You can script safety while your nervous system scans for threat. This isn't sabotage, it's self-protection. Your subconscious identity is not trying to keep you small, it's trying to keep you safe in the only field it's ever known. Like trying to light a candle in a hurricane, it's not that the flame is weak, it's that the environment doesn't support it yet. The contradiction between identity and intention creates wind, and the field, always listening, always mirroring, aligns with the dominant frequency. Not the loudest thought, the deepest belief. Your body holds the memories that shape this dissonance. The reticular activating system filters your awareness to match your identity. The mirror neuron network scans the environment, not for potential, but for coherence with your emotional past. Before you even realize it, your perception has already chosen which version of reality to confirm. And so, without knowing, you recreate the same loops, not because they're true, but because they feel familiar. But this is not a verdict, it's an invitation. Because dissonance is not failure, it's friction that reveals where the field is ready to evolve, not through force, through congruence. When your inner signal begins to resemble the emotional tone of the timeline you seek, the contradiction dissolves. The field no longer has two frequencies to choose from. Ask this not with logic, but with vibration. Would the version of you who already lives this feel what you're feeling right now? If the answer is no, the path is not to push harder, it's to rehearse coherence, not in the mind, but in the field, in micro-behaviors, in nervous system tone, in the quiet ways you carry yourself throughout the day, not through pretending, through alignment. This is how the shift stabilizes. When your system begins to embody the feeling of the future, not as fantasy, but as familiar. When joy becomes less like a vision and more like a resting state. When abundance stops being a goal and starts becoming the background rhythm. You are not blocked, you are becoming coherent. And the moment the field no longer feels contradiction, the timeline changes, quietly, instantly, inevitably.
The most pivotal moment in any quantum shift is the one most misunderstood. It's not the moment of clarity, nor the peak of confidence, nor the flash of inspired vision. It's the moment just before it all, when everything seems to fall apart, when the world goes quiet, when nothing makes sense, when the identity you once trusted begins to dissolve, and you're left in a space that feels like emptiness, or confusion, or emotional disorientation.
That moment is not regression, it is field mutation. When a new timeline is about to emerge, the old one destabilizes first. Vibrational instability is the signal that the field is reorganizing. But instability rarely feels graceful. It feels like chaos, like fatigue, like emotional disconnection. Not because you've lost your power, but because your nervous system is releasing its old coordinates. Your previous identity, the one you anchored for years, no longer holds, and your body doesn't yet know who to become instead. You may find yourself feeling lost, without reason. You may feel detached from desires that once burned brightly. People, places, routines, they begin to lose their emotional weight. It can feel like grief, or like floating, or like being suspended between lifetimes. And it is, because part of you is dying, the part that kept choosing from survival, the part that kept transmitting based on old wounds, the part that held coherence with a timeline that no longer matches your becoming. This space is sacred. It's the silence before the rupture, the stillness before the avalanche. In quantum terms, it is the moment when the wave destabilizes, preparing to collapse. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, but it's absolute. Your field is recalibrating in the unseen, even if your outer life seems paused, or fragmented, or stripped of meaning. The shift isn't always marked by signs or synchronicities. Sometimes it begins in emptiness, in the absence of noise, in the absence of clarity. Because only from that 0 point can new coherence emerge. The field does not rebuild upon chaos. It builds upon what remains after the chaos has been witnessed. There's a window, subtle but powerful, right after a coherence practice. After you've aligned your breath, felt into the future, connected with your heart's signal. That window is not for action, it's for observation, not to analyze, but to sense. This is where the vibrational watcher awakens, where you begin to track the field, not with expectation, but with presence. In the next 48 hours, your body may shift, your dreams may change, conversations may carry a different tone, not because you forced a result, but because your signal has stopped repeating the past. The story of spontaneous remission, of instant change, of field miracles, often begins here, in the data collected by Dr. Joe Dispenza's coherence experiments. The most profound shifts came not during the peak of intention, but in the stillness that followed. In that moment, when the body was no longer resisting, when the brain was no longer anticipating, when the field simply aligned. So if you're feeling lost, unclear, or detached from everything you once clung to, you're not going backwards. You're exiting the gravitational pull of a timeline that no longer fits. The discomfort is not the problem. It's the proof. You are not dissolving. You are mutating. And what comes next is the timeline your old self was never built to hold.
When the shift finally occurs, it doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it lands as a softness, a strange peace, a new kind of silence. And yet, that silence can be the most fragile space of all. Because after the field collapses into a new configuration, The body often searches for the familiar, not because it prefers the past, but because it hasn't fully learned how to rest in the unknown. This is where most sabotage happens, not out of weakness, but out of vibrational reflex. The emotional body remembers the old timeline like muscle memory. It knows how to be afraid. It knows how to prepare for disappointment. It knows how to loop the signal of almost. And so, even after the field has shifted, the nervous system may scan for proof, may tighten around uncertainty, may whisper that the change isn't real yet. But the truth is, it already is. The only question is, can your identity allow it? There is a subtle resistance that arises when the new begins to arrive. Not dramatic, not loud, but present. The part of you that still looks for signs to feel safe. The part that measures worth by external validation. The part that doesn't fully trust ease. This is not failure. It's just emotional gravity. The pull of an outdated identity trying to find its footing in a reality it wasn't designed to exist in. But coherence doesn't end at the shift. It must be stabilized, not through repetition, but through embodiment, through being, not becoming. You don't integrate a new frequency by thinking about it. You integrate it by living as if it's already familiar, not as performance, as memory. Because at the quantum level, time doesn't determine truth. Frequency does. So instead of chasing confirmation, choose anchoring. Instead of scanning for proof, become the proof. Choose one sensory thread, a scent, a song, a posture, a tone of voice, and let it become the gravity of the new field. Not a ritual to force outcomes, but a vibrational imprint, a sacred code your body can return to every day. Integration isn't about controlling the field. It's about becoming the version of you that no longer doubts it. And as the days unfold, you may still feel the flickers of the old identity rise, the question, the tension, the sudden urge to fix what no longer needs fixing. That's when you remember, you are not broken. You are not falling back. You are just crossing the threshold where the new reality requires your presence more than your effort. Because your new timeline isn't something outside of you. It's not waiting to appear. It's already here, held together by the coherence of your becoming. And who you allow yourself to be now decides whether it stays. So ask, with the same reverence you brought to the shift, not what do I want to manifest, but who am I willing to remember myself as, now that I no longer need to chase? The field is listening, and this time, it already knows your name.